This is the new Toyota Supra. Updated for 2021 with more power, extra bracing to make it an even sharper, faster rear drive sports car. Whee!
And this is the AMG A45S. Now the two cars we have today are fundamentally quite different. However, they cost the same amount of money, and as this video will show, their level of performance at a racetrack is surprisingly similar.
Okay, so these might not seem to be the most natural bedfellows, but for the purpose of this comparison, we're just going to forget that the A45 has 5 doors and 5 seats, and instead we just want to find out what is the best performance car you can buy for about 100 grand.
Exactly, because while these cars make their performance very differently, the level of performance is pretty similar.
Absolutely.
So how are we going to gauge which one is the best performance car? We're going to do drive each, we're going to have a little bit of a chat about them, but then we're going to put them through a couple of tests. So we're going to put them through a slide competition, see which one is more fun. Then we're going to get you to put your race helmet on and set some lap times in each one and talk us through the differences, where the strengths and weaknesses are.
Okay, sounds good. Since we're in it, let's start with the Toyota Supra here in newly updated form. It doesn't really feel like the Supra came out that long ago.
I know.
But here we are already at the first update. It's pretty mild, but the big news is from this 3-litre straight 6, we now have an extra 35 kilowatts. So that brings it to 285. Torque is the same, 500 Newton meters, but the torque spread is over a wider power band. So basically, you got more grunt more of the time.
Absolutely, and this is my kind of update. Don't do the headlights or some styling tweaks. Give the thing more power. That's what we want. Today is all about performance, but let's quickly talk about the cabin because they've updated a little bit.
Yep.
It's pretty dark and dour in here, but it's very comfortable. I like these seats. You know, this is a very windy circuit we're on today, so I've got lots of lateral support. And while the A45's cabin is glitzier, I think the level of quality in here is actually a little bit higher.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the highs of the A45 are a bit high. You get the lovely screens, but you can find some pretty cheap materials quite easily. Whereas this, even if you reach down here, it's still nice leather padded, nice and soft. We've got a nice leather wheel. All these materials feel pretty good.
And the fundamentals are bang on. Seating position, really good. Steering wheel's right where you want it to be. It's a bit of a gunslit view from here. It feels pretty closed in compared to the airy A45. But
you know, a hand span between the mirror and the nav to look out of, especially with a camera in it, but that's okay.
So you do feel like you kind of hunker down.
Yeah, that's part of the appeal, I think.
It's kind of cool.
Yep, I like it. And that makes lots more sense when you're doing as the Supra's meant to be done and driving it really quickly.
So, 35 extra kilowatts.
Yes.
Can you feel it?
Objectively, it'd be tricky. Like, you do have a bit more traction difficulties, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. The engine's great. Taken from BMW, straight 6. You know, that's a recipe made in heaven. So it's an old school recipe, but this thing is really fun. Even at a track like this, where you would think it would sort of favour the A45, but a rear drive, big engine car is going to be hilarious, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, you can enjoy it in any environment. I've had this thing at Phillip Island, and it was great. Had it at Winton, it was great. And it here, on a really tight track where you think it might be a bit overwhelmed, perhaps, still lots of fun. So I think one of the things with the Supra is, you do have something to do as a driver. It's quite precise and it's on your side, which is great, but you can overdrive it quite easily. If you carry the brake in too much, it'll oversteer on exit. You give it too much throttle, you'll get too much wheel spin. So it's easy to give away time. But it means as a driver, you make the difference. And crucially, it feels on your side enough that it sort of helps you do that. It doesn't fight you or, you know, be a bit, you know, mute in its responses.
It does. Let's jump into the other German car.
Let's do it.
Okay, Scotty, welcome to what is currently the ultimate expression of the hot hatch. Can we just pause for a moment to consider we now have hot hatches with more than 300 kilowatts and that cost almost $100,000?
No, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, you look at the bare specs of this car and it's not a million miles away in power, torque, acceleration from like a 996, 911 turbo. So it's remarkable how far we've come, thankfully, without the associated price tag, but still $100,000, what's meant to be like an everyman's everyday car.
Is it too much? Is it too much for a hot hatch?
Well, not really, because it certainly does, delivers on the price tag in terms of raw performance.
And I reckon this car is probably one of the most improved models ever from generation to generation.
Yeah, absolutely, I'd agree with that. It's the first A45 completely rewrote the hot hatch rulebook in terms of its, funnily enough, price and performance, all the things this car does really well, but this car just blows it out of the water.
Yeah, it does. And they've really focused on probably 3 key areas, I reckon, to improve this car where you notice it the most. The first one is, importantly, ride quality, because the first generation A45, man, that could be it'd beat you up on a really broken road. The other thing they focused on, gearbox. The old guy had a 7-speed dual clutch and it was a bit finicky. It wouldn't give you downshifts when you wanted, but this car now has an 8-speed dual clutch and it is much improved.
This car can still occasionally pause when you want to downshift, but that's mainly, I think, because the first couple of gears are so short to give it that remarkable 0 to 100 time.
Yeah.
Whereas the old car, it just seemed to be, didn't want to give you a gear. You'd be like mashing the button like you're playing a fighting game on the PlayStation or something, trying to like, give me seven, give me gear, give me gear. And then eventually you'd hopefully end up in the right gear you wanted. Whereas this car will zing the revs around to 6.5 as long as you're in the zone.
You mentioned that brutal 0 to 100 time, and if you haven't watched our drag race video between these two cars, click the banner up there right now. But this car is more than just straight line performance, because the most important thing they've changed with this car is the way it goes around corners.
I couldn't believe it when I first drove this car, how much it rotates now, how keenly it rotates. Not just on throttle, that's part of it, you know, they've always talked about the drift mode, whee! But on the way into the corner, you can adjust it on the brakes, you can adjust it mid-corner, you can adjust it on exit using all the tools at your disposal. So it's remarkable how much more playful and adjustable it is compared to its fast, relatively inert predecessor.
Probably the thing that dominates the experience the most, this 2-litre engine. Oh, it is a sledgehammer for such a small unit, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I have no idea how they've done it. And that's the thing. It's like the power figure is one thing, but you've been able to get 310 kilowatts out of 2 litres for decades. Yeah. But you had to deal with a power band that was like 500 RPM wide and massive amounts of lag. Whereas this has a tiny hesitation, but it's essentially got a 5,000 RPM power band. It picks up so quickly and the power just keeps going up and up and up all the way past $7,000. It's amazing.
It's transformed this car this generation, and not only is it better to drive, but it's more fun to drive. And
absolutely.
That is a really important thing to inject. But is it more fun than the Supra?
Well, that's a good question. So to find that out, why don't we find a corner, disengage the electronics, and we'll have a bit of a skid competition to see which car really wants to move around the most.
Time for the fun stuff, and I think I am at a little bit of a disadvantage here. All-wheel drive, hatchback. He's got a rear-wheel drive Supra with a straight 6 up front. Looks pretty easy, to be honest. Scott is a good driver, but looks pretty easy. But I do have a weapon up my sleeve in the form of drift mode. Haven't used it before, so how do I engage it? Car into race, ESC all the way off. There we go. Manual mode, pull both paddles back, drift mode confirmed. Okay, that's that. Let's see if it works. Second gear, slow in, just gas it. Oh. Bit loose on the third one.
A good first effort. We had angle for all 3 corners. Maybe a little bit more angle needed, and but we can work from there.
It was a bit messy in here, if I'm honest. Drift mode works though. Better than I was expecting. I didn't really know what to expect going into that, so you can slide in A45. Lots of angle on the first one, not confident enough to flick it into the second.
On the big one on the first one.
I got too greedy on the first one, ran out of road for the transition. Ah. Nah. Nah, I can't get that flick. But that was fun. That was lots and lots of fun.
The Supra doesn't have a drift mode, it's got old school drift mode. Rear wheel drive, lots of power, turn the electronics off. And hopefully I don't let the side down. Oh no, I stuffed up the transition.
Yeah, good solid first effort, though I'd like to see a bit more angle on the change of direction through the second drift, please.
No, you were very harsh, Judge. Yeah, I stuffed up the transition there. I just got a bucket load of understeer. All right, run 2 up the hill. We'll see what we can do. All right, here we go. Second gear. Let's try and link all 3 again. I don't know if that'll work.
The second and third drifts were your best yet, but the first one wasn't quite as good as your
Oh,
second.
God, yeah. I don't know, I thought a bit cleaner that time, but yeah, maybe not as committed. Go second gear. Second gear seems to be the way. That's better.
Yes, you got all 3, beautiful work.
It's just hanging on there, I think.
With the Supra taking the win in the sliding challenge, it's time to see which of these two is quickest around a lap of the undulating 1.4 kilometre Bryant Park hill climb circuit. This track should suit the A45's traction advantage, but in reality, it was incredibly close. Heading into the first tricky right-hander, the Supra grabs a small advantage, which it holds onto as the track falls away into a fast downhill section. Scott is busy at the wheel in both cars here, but the A45's looser rear end sees it lose a little more time. But the A45 reclaims some of that time through this tight sequence of turns, with the Supra struggling to get its power down. A big snap of oversteer from the Supra robs some time, but while the corner speeds of both of these cars is very similar, often within 1 kilometre an hour of each other, the Supra spends less time at its minimum speed, and that is ultimately the difference. The Supra clocking the faster lap by 0.6 of a second. So it's 2 wins from 2 challenges for the Supra, which means it wins this contest. But the tables were turned when we visited the drag strip. So if you haven't already, make sure you give that video a watch. And if you like this video, please hit subscribe to the Moto YouTube channel.